What is the most hurtful thing a medical professional has ever said to you? Me with my pants down, getting checked for a hernia. Doctor, are you able to get an erection? Me, that is an erection. Edit. Wow. A lot of people asking why you need an erection for a hernia exam. You don't. The doctor was asking if I was able to get one, since a hernia can affect your genitals, and the doctor was just checking. I went to the doctor's office as a child because I was terribly ill and throwing up. The doctor asked if school exams were coming up. I said yes. She simply said MMMHMM. That explains it then. And then she rolled her eyes. I had to take my son to the ER when he was 2 because he was having trouble breathing. The ER doc said he most likely had asthma, so she gave us an inhaler. Flash forward 3 days when we go to have his follow-up with his pediatrician, Dr. Jack. So, he saw this ER doctor once in his life and you trusted her to make a lifelong determination that your son has asthma? That's pretty ridiculous. 6 months later, after 3 more ER visits with my son being unable to breathe, Dr. Jack, it looks like I owe you an apology. It turns out your son quite likely does have asthma. Surprised he apologized, at least. New doctor took my height measurement and jotted it down before issuing me a very casual, tall for a woman. I'm a bearded man. He was just stating a fact. That height would in fact be tall for a woman. Came in for something totally different, and she commented on my stretch marks on my hips and around my breast. I was around 17 years old and had gotten them when I hit puberty because I developed so much in a short amount of time. I explained this to her and she had a whole dialogue with herself about her originally thinking it would have been because I used to be fat, and after my explanation just lamenting about how sad it was for me that I would have to live my entire life with a body like that. Changed doctor the next day. When I was 16 and dealing with partial deafness, sometimes being a teenage girl is hard, but it's hard to parent them too, so there's no need to exaggerate things to make things harder for your parents. Knock it off. There's nothing wrong with you. 2 tumors, 9 surgeries, and a CSF leak later. Yes doctor, there really was something wrong. I'd send that doctor a card with images of your tumors to the doctor with a note that reads the inadequacy of your professional capabilities is a measurable danger to public health. Was having digestive issues I eventually learned were a result of my undiagnosed cancer. Doctor suggested I should wipe better. 3 months I'm pregnant, start spotting. Spend about 10 hours at the hospital. Vaginal ultrasounds, lots of diagnostic testing. Nothing they can do. Tell me to go home and wait to miscarry. I'm a wreck. It's now late, dark and rainy outside, but I don't have a way to get home because hubby is at work with our only car, was very young and poor. Doc says the nurses have taxi vouchers they can give me to get home. Go to nurses station, ask for a taxi voucher. Nurse says we only give taxi vouchers to women who have living babies. I woke up in the hospital and heard a nurse running out saying he's awake. The drive comes into the room and tells me to move my toes. I ask them where I am and what's going on. He just gets more insistent that I move your toes. I asked again where I was and that was going on. He almost yells at me, move your toes. I said I'm moving my toes, and immediately he says you will never walk again. That's how I found out I was a paraplegic at 21 years old. I had been in a single car wreck and was thrown 70 to 80 feet from the car and my vertebrae was dislocated and laying next to another one. I don't remember the car wreck, but that exchange with the doctor is burned into my brain, and that was 31 years ago. Edit 1. Damn, this blew up. Thank you to you all for your comments. I had a seatbelt on, but went off a small hill next to the interstate after clipping an end of the guardrail. Flipped the car down the hill and seatbelt gave way under the pressure and I went out the driver door window. My back collapsed around the door sill and dislocated one vertebra next to the one below it. I'm a big guy, 6 feet 4 inches and 235 at the time, and the force was too much for the seat structure. I found out all these details over the next few weeks while I was in rehab. Before surgery on my eye, the nurse was telling me how her daughter and I went to the same high school. She then peeked under my gown to look at my pee-pee and let out a small laugh. I was more shocked than offended, but she didn't have to laugh or look at my junk. Edit. Few clarifications. I didn't report her or say anything. She was done shaving my knee, waited, then lifted the gown for a real quick peek. It wasn't like she upskirted me and laughed. She sought out the peak. George Costanza covered shrinkage at pools, but didn't mention a 62-degree hospital room in nothing but a gown, lying down, while nervous about surgery, and the effect that has. It is not a flattering effect. It was hurtful, because of her giggle, and stayed with me, because she could have known me by proxy of her daughter or the family I knew in her neighborhood. I'm insecure about how others think about me, so the fact she could have told her daughter is why it felt extra, and comes up in those lovely anxiety plays my brain likes to put on while I try to sleep. It would have been a bit different if she was some random nurse with no connection to me, a friend's family, my old school, or her daughter being in my sister's grade. Most importantly, I'm really surprised at how many other guys have had the same thing happen. I've seen like 7 stories now just like mine. The suggestion that I had confused a panic attack for a seizure. To clarify, this was my first grand mal seizure. My father had them prior, and my mother witnessed both him having one and myself having mine. According to her, it was identical. I even hit all the textbook marks of having had an epileptic seizure, from the memory loss to the postictal fatigue. The emergency room doctor didn't run any tests or examine my family history of epilepsy. He simply noticed the anxiety disorder in my medical history and assumed that I was just having a panic attack and wrote it off as my only issue being that I'd hit my head. Talking to my psychiatrist later about the incident, he confirmed based only on my account, corroborated with mom's details, where I couldn't fill in, that I had definitely had a seizure, and he sent the orders for further testing himself. He also couldn't refrain from saying, "What the duck is wrong with this doctor?" I'm glad that at least one of my doctors took my seriously. Once phoned a doctor about a lump I'd found on my balls. He said, "Is it black and the size of a tennis ball?" To which I said no, and he said it's nothing to worry about then and hung up. Edit. It ended up being a cyst that I had checked out and was luckily fine. Didn't expect my balls to blow up so much, but I'd hoped they'd one day earn me gold. Thank you, kind sir. Blessings of Stender upon ye. Getting out of the army, you are 100% healthy. My medical record was about 6 inches thick. Went to a civilian doctor and they were astonished anyone would say that. I'm rated 80% disabled. My mother and grandfather were both injured in the army. They will do everything in their power to claim that you are healthy, because if you are injured they pay your medical bills for life. They tried to tell grandpa that losing all of his teeth and having a crack down his forehead did not qualify him for a Purple Heart. You can't be in that much pain. You must have more energy than that. Turns out the lining of my nerves was being destroyed. I was becoming paralyzed, painfully. Manuscript. My wife was finally diagnosed with that. Took several years and several doctors. If it is manuscript, or really anything else, then I hope whatever medication you're able to get helps prevent any further progression. Best of luck and best wishes. Not sure if psychiatrists count, but you need to stop talking to me about your past. I have other patients who had it worse than you know. I'd only been seeing this woman for 2 months. It had taken me years to work up the courage to seek help, though the fear that my problems weren't real problems or weren't important. We barely even touched on the trouble I came in wanting help for, because the doctor decided on week 2 that I had generalized anxiety disorder, and that was that. Not psychologically hurtful necessarily, but the most terrifying thing I've ever been told. We are going to have to defibrillate you, and we don't have time to sedate you. They rolled the crash cart with paddles into my room, and I said, "Get that thing the duck away from me," and almost cried. My mom was in the room with me, and was absolutely hysterical. Thankfully a cardiologist was able to look at my EKG in the nick of time, and determined my heart rhythm was stable enough for me to just be transferred to a room for further evaluation without defibrillation. Me, when I was 9. About to go under anesthesia for the first time ever for oral surgery, and being extremely scared. "Nurse, you need to grow up. I've had kids half your age not be as much a scaredy cat as you." My mother was not, by any means, a helicopter parent, but the thrashing she gave that nurse, the other nurse who chuckled at it, and the doctor who came in was insane. and then she took me out of that office. The surgery was not a time sensitive thing, just to fix a soon to be impacted adult tooth and for ice cream. I had the surgery done at a different office with a staff that had far better bedside manners. When I was 21 I went to the doctor for a checkup. The doctor asks me to lift my shirt and I do. He immediately says egg and makes a look of disgust on his face. I was an idiot and was gaining weight too quickly. Due to this, I had stretch marks. I've lost the weight and am normal weight now, but I still can't shake that moment. This was 8 years ago. Got any similar stories? Leave it in the comments below.